Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Tuesday. It's November 4th. This will be our chart lesson for today. And another big bearish day today. We talked about yesterday that if we went lower, our next logical target would be the midline. And you can see we traded a little lower than that, but closed above it. So will we bounce here? It's possible. If not, the next target's going to be the lower side of the trend, the trend line here, and the lower side of the channel with the trend line. And if that doesn't hold, the next logical support will be one of these two envelope bands. So we just turned down from being overbought. So we may be headed to the lower side. We'll see if this trend line is going to remain in play. We're coming up short this time. So if we continue lower here, we could get a break this time. And the break might be equal to how much we came up short. So we could, and that would kind of fit with the band. So that's a possibility. So we'll see what tomorrow brings, if we get a bounce here or if we're going to continue lower. This was a really pretty bearish day. However, most of the down move came during the overnight, and then we just kind of worked sideways really after that. Looked like we were going to rally and take a lot of it back, but it didn't end up happening. We ended up just kind of selling back off again and working sideways. So let's flip over to the 2000 tick chart, and I'll show you what that looks like, and we'll go through the trades and we'll wrap today up. Okay, here's our 2000 tick chart. You can see the big sell-off during the overnight. We bounced a little bit, took about half of it back, and then turned down from there, and we just could not breach this support level down here. 67.95 to 67.97 or so was really strong support, and we just couldn't breach that. So for now, that holds. Let's actually do this. Let's go back to the daily chart and see where that's lining up with, and see if we can get a couple more clues before we move on with the chart lesson. Okay, here we are. Let's take a look and see about where 60. That's going to be pretty close to where we're at now. That's where we broke out before that we never retested. So we could just be coming back to retest that, and we filled that gap. Remember the gap? We filled that gap that was right here. So we could bounce here. We would have accomplished filling the gap. We would have accomplished filling back and testing this breakout here and this one here. And so yeah, I mean we're at a spot where, and you can see that the highs of this, those highs that we talked about on the other chart, are between these highs and these highs. So that kind of makes sense that would be somewhere where you might find support and you might bounce. We'll just have to see what happens. So tomorrow will tell the tale if we're going to go higher or if we might turn back down. So, but let's go back to the 2000 tick chart again, and we'll go through the trades. Okay, again, here it is. You can see we had the big sell-off, and then we rallied a little bit and got that about a 50% rally and turned down again. We didn't make a measured move. Really, I would call that move. It lasted over 2 days. And you can see we didn't get anywhere near that. Doesn't mean we won't, but usually when you come up very short like that, it means you're going to rally much further in the other direction. So we'll see if we don't rally from here, if we're going to end up moving down and at least meeting that target. So yeah, there it is. Let's zoom in here. 7 o'clock came as we were trending down here, and this was close to, you might call that a triple test. It makes a new low, so I think you got to have a higher low. Notice you're working down. You do get a close outside. I don't think that signal bar on that second entry is good enough to go short there, even though you're looking for a retest for the low. But we get it and it bounces, so maybe you go long there. I mean, it's relatively low risk. It's 10 ticks, so maybe you go long there. And then you get 2 legs back again in the second entry, and notice you do get a break and new low, and you make a higher low. So I like that one better. And it runs up, and of course you find resistance up here, and you might notice we tried to go higher there and turn down, so you might argue that's a triple test. I'm not crazy about that entry because we're still in this channel with no close outside. Actually, I take that back. You could argue we closed outside and made a new high all in one there, and that would be a second entry short. So I marked it green. It looks a little sideways, a little congested, but there's still plenty of room back to the EMA, reasons to consider that. So maybe you take that trade. I marked it green, but you could take it. And then here we're working down again. You get a close outside, move to a new low. Now, I didn't mark that one. It's just a first entry. But again, it's one you might argue that you could say, hey, maybe you want to take a chance on that failed break lower. But again, you're better off to wait on the higher low, which comes here. And you would have already scalped out there, and it comes back. I think there's just enough to scalp out on that one. I would not enter that on the engulfing bar. You got to wait for that to close. And it just makes a double bottom, so it's possible, depending on how you played it, you could have got a runner there. But that's why I like these failed breakouts, because they end up with moves like this. And we run up here, close outside, new high here, and then we get the correction that comes back. And notice we really test this 3 times on the pullback. You get a triple test there. If you move this up to those lows, you can see there's a triple test there of the previous highs. And it's also a first entry, second entry, and it's a really good signal bar. So I like that one. Maybe you get a high or low too, but you end up getting one, but I think it's moved too far to be tradable. Here you just get a first entry. This is just sideways, and you're working lower. But notice you get a trend down, close outside, move to a new low. That signal bar doesn't qualify. This one makes a new low. Now you might argue, hey, that one, maybe if you want to be aggressive, but I think you're better off to wait on this higher low here. And boom, off it goes. And you get another second entry here. Notice the new high, you're working down, close outside. It does not make a new low, but a break above that's a second entry. And it seems like it's all bouncing off the EMA there. So maybe you go long there. I marked it green. It looks a little sideways. We didn't quite make a new low. There's just some reasons. All that looks a little congested. It would have been a great move just for scalp. You might have got a little runner there too. But then you're working down, close outside. Not a very convincing one, but I think you can argue there's a close outside and a move to a new low and then a higher low. Now you can't call that one green, even though it's off the trend line, because that's your signal bar and it doesn't qualify. But this one does. You could take that one. You might even argue there's another higher low and a failure here, continuation pattern, but there's just not much room to that high. I'm not crazy about it, but you might argue for that one too to be green. And it runs up to a new high and just reverses. Now there is a lower high here. I don't think you want to enter there on a lower high. There's not much room to that low. You might say, okay, there's a reversal here, but you got to go short at the very low of that move into some previous support across there. So it's not a reversal I would want to take. It turns out to be a great move, but I just think you have to skip that. Then you get a break here. Notice you earn up, you get a first entry, and you get a close outside, a new high, and a break below. That's a second entry. I like going short there. On a retest, that's a really strong move down. You're going to get a retest of that low. And off it goes. Close outside, move to a new low. There's a second entry short here, but the signal bar doesn't qualify. And then this is just real choppy, but you do get a triple test here. There's a double top, so you could argue that's a second entry. And really you could argue there's a triple test right here. But I think you need a new low first, and you don't get that till here. And then you could say, hey, you still got a triple test, you got your break, and 2 legs to a new low, so I like going long there. Of course, this one's working up, close outside, new high. So that's another second entry short, but I don't think that signal bar qualifies. It runs down, and then it tries to go lower again and gives you a second entry long. You can't enter that on the engulfing bar. A break above that would be a second entry long, and it runs back up. And I'd draw my trend line here just in case, and it does get confirmed right here, and that I think you can argue that you got a triple test up here, and you can definitely see you got a confirmation of that trend line. And this actually broke higher and turned down. I think you could enter that on the engulfing bar, but even if you didn't, I think that's bearish enough you could still enter as long as you got room to get out there. I'm pretty sure there's room there. Let's just measure it. Yeah, there's a little more than 2 points there. And that just keeps going. Close outside new low. Again, you might, that looks a little sideways there, but again, you might argue for that to be green. But again, you're better off to wait on the higher low. And that comes here, and there's not much room back to the trend line, the possible trend line. As you can see, there's maybe enough to get out there, but I don't think I would risk that. I would just sit tight. Of course, it is a second entry short, but you're still in that channel. If anything, I would say maybe you go short there, but I'd probably sit tight and wait on both of those. And you can see by now it's obvious that trend line's in play. But signal bar, you can't trade that. And then you do get a lower high here, but you've moved too far. You go short right into a double bottom. Not a good move. You're coming down, close outside, and that's just a first entry. And this thing, the bottom just kind of fell out of it. We finally bounce at the lower side, and that thing's working up. And notice you get a first entry, and it's a second entry when it breaks below that, but it's an inside bar. So wait and see if you get a lower high, but you don't. That's too sideways. Then it bounces again. And notice you're working up. You get a close outside, move to a new high. And you do get a close outside your trend line, but that's a relatively low risk, 8 ticks. You did get your close outside and a new high, so I like going short there. And that turns out to be a really good move down. And this is just some choppy stuff here, but I think you could argue right here you try to go higher once, twice, actually once, twice, 3 times. This one's close, but regardless, you still get a close outside the channel and a second entry short, and then definitely you get a triple test here, even though it's a first entry. So I like taking both of those just because of the resistance across there. This is just a first entry. Then you actually bottom out here. You're working back higher again, close outside, and you make a new low there. Notice that swing low, then you get one lower here. So that's a new low, and you get a first entry and a break below. That's a second entry. So here you get a close outside, 2 legs to a new high, and a second entry short. I'm going to take that one. It's a little bit of extra stem, but I still think you can argue for that trade right there. And of course, it bounces off the EMA and works higher yet again. And then we're just kind of working sideways here, really. I don't see anything in here that I'm going to risk up or down, because it's really hard now to say, okay, what are prices doing here? Really, to me, it just looks like they're stuck in some type of a range here. Maybe like, it looks more like that. And it's just hard to know. Are prices going higher here or lower? It's just hard to know. So don't do anything. And of course, they end up going lower, but I don't see anything you can trade down through there. And then we reverse, and this is all too choppy and sideways. Finally, you get a move up. There is a second entry here. I didn't draw this one, but this would be its own separate trend line, really. And the problem is you don't really get a close outside. You do get a second entry there. Maybe you argue for that to be green. I'd wait on the lower high, which doesn't come to here, and you don't want to enter short right there. It still would have worked, but I wouldn't enter there. You actually get a second entry long down here, But again, you're still in that channel and you hadn't had a close outside. So I think being this late in the day, maybe you give it a green, but I would wait on the higher low, which you don't get a chance to trade. Actually, you get one that's here, but it's moved too far, and it's into 230. So I just didn't see much this afternoon that I felt was worth risking it on. Now, you can obviously see we're working higher here, but if you go long on any of these, you're taking a first entry with not a great signal bar either. So that late in the day, I wouldn't risk it. So notice we did get a close outside here. That one's probably not very convincing. So, but these definitely are, and you get a new low there. So it looked like it might reverse here, but you can see it was better off to wait. And then here it didn't. It was hard to know if it was going to reverse. It's working higher, but it's just so choppy and sideways, and nothing real clear there. So anyway, there's still plenty of entries there today. But once you got past this part right here, this was really, it's hard to know what prices are doing there. You would expect them to reverse, but they're not, and they can't go lower, so we're just chopping sideways. So you got to be real careful with this stuff right in here. So really, once we got past this new low, you're better off just to kind of sit tight almost. So status quo. But there it is. Yeah, I think we were working on two legs down and we just couldn't get through this support. Will it hold tomorrow and send us higher? We'll have to see. I showed you what the targets would be if we went lower. And if the support holds, we're probably going to push up again. So we'll just have to kind of see how the day's going and how it plays out before we'll know for sure. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. It'll be interesting to see what happens, but I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.